Hey folks, it's Doc for Ready Set Crypto for Thursday, February 1st, and we are definitely crashing away to the downside today. So today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you 8 tips to handle the bear. 8 tips to handle the bear. And the first 2 tips that I have here, the first 2 pointers, are really to help you avoid getting into trouble in the first place. And you may have heard me talk about them before, maybe not. We've had a number of new subscribers come on board just in the last few days, so it's worth going over these 2 again. So number 1 is rule number 1 of risk management, which is to define your exits before you enter, right? So typically what happens is people jump into an entry as the price is running away to the upside, and then all of a sudden when the red candles start to appear, they don't know what to do. They're paralyzed, deer in the headlights, because they had not defined their exits before they enter the position. It's literally impossible to figure out what to do when you're taking heat on a position like this. You don't know what to do, and everybody says, hodl, hodl. And that's not their capital, it's your capital that you're dealing with the losses on here. Rule number 1 is to define your exits before you enter. Now, pointer number 2 is what I call the golden rule of risk management, which is risk no more than 2% of your capital on any one position. So what that means is that no one position is going to put more than a 2% dent in your capital. And probably that's not what most of you are doing right now, because most of people will say, hey, I have $10,000, I want to put it into 5 positions, and so right off the bat, you're putting 20% of your risk capital into any one position. Pointer number 2, again, risk no more than 2% of your capital on any one position. Now, you can use a bigger than 2% portion of your account on any one position, but identify where you will take a stop on that so that you're not going to eat more than 2% of your account on any one position. The next 6 pointers are really about bear markets and how to handle them. And so pointer number 3 is there's no such thing as support in a bear market. So what you'll see is things like this where the price starts to really run to the downside, and you expect the price to bounce at something like this trend line that's connected all the important lows since last summer. And guess what? It just knifes right through it like it wasn't even there. And many times it'll go through Fibonacci retracements, which is what I'm showing here, like they're not even there. And people will complain and say, well, that's not fair. Nothing's fair in a bear market. In a bear market, there is no such thing as support. Pointer number 4, the pain to the downside is directly proportional to the euphoria on the upside. So here's the euphoria on the upside. You can see how this just goes nearly parabolic to the upside, right? The pain that we're experiencing is almost directly proportional to the amount of euphoria to the upside. So if it's a relatively small rally to the upside, we're not going to see that much pain to the downside. However, if it's a titanic rally like this one was into December, then we're going to have an equal amount of pain. It's almost like looking in a mirror. The 2 sides will be diametrically opposite. And that leads to number 5, pointer number 5. The stronger the whoosh or capitulation to the downside, and I wish I had my drawing pen. I apologize. I'm doing tonight's on a laptop and I don't have a drawing pen to show you this. But a lot of times what you'll see is on the final capitulation, it's what I call a waterfall decline. The price will be coming along and all of a sudden, wham! It just goes straight down like that, like it fell off a waterfall. And it will bounce up just as fast, because what happens is you basically run out of sellers. There's nowhere for the price to go. So the stronger that whoosh to the downside happens, the stronger the upside slingshot. That leads to pointer number 6 here. Markets are designed to rise due to optimistic human behavior. So rarely do we see a market completely going to zero. So a lot of times we'll look at this, we'll look at all the strong selling, and we'll go, oh no, this could go to zero. I could lose all of my capital. And it's very unlikely to do that because as long as there is some intrinsic value behind the idea, the value proposition for what's happening here, which is why we've been talking about platforms lately. Platforms, because you can build on top of them. There's intrinsic value to those. So this is where we're really high on those. As long as there's intrinsic value to the idea, they're not going to go to zero. Very, very unlikely. Right? Very unlikely that the governments around the world are going to outlaw these platforms. They all want these platforms. It's just a struggle for control right now. That leads to number 7. Pointer number 7. At the very bottom of the bear market, all news is going to be overwhelmingly negative. You're not going to see any positive articles. You're not going to see anybody saying, hey, wait a minute, let's think about this for a second. Nope. The media, the press is going to jump all over the negative news because people eat that stuff up and it gets ratings. So they're going to pump more out, and the worse it gets, the more they're going to pump out. You're not going to find any positive articles at the bottom of a market move like this, like a bear. Everywhere you go, if you search on Bitcoin, you're going to see negative, negative, negative articles. And at the bottom, it's going to be particularly bad. You're going to feel like there's just no hope. There's no chance that this will ever survive. Crypto will be outlawed. It's going to be banished. And you're going to feel like, wow, this is just completely hopeless. And this is the job of every bear market, to get people to fold their hand and give up. Okay? Now, that leads me to my last point. The eventual bounce, when the bounce does happen, is going to be met with disbelief. Nobody's going to believe it. The situation is going to appear to be so bad that nobody's going to believe it when the price bounces. And that's why nobody is on board. Only the smart money is on board at the very bottom. Only the smart money is on board at the very, very bottom, because nobody believes it. Everybody is completely skeptical, and this is why retail investors are always, always, always on the wrong side of the smart money. Always on the wrong side of the smart money. Now, this weekend's report, what I'm going to talk to you about is, let's flip over to the other side. Let's quit talking about bear markets for a minute. Let's talk about the opportunities that they provide and what we can do to perhaps enter. What can we do to be the smart money if there is some opportunity here on the dip? So we'll talk about this weekend, and we'll start to emphasize the positive opportunities that are out there. All right, folks, that is it for today's report. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you this weekend.